Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 117 of Into the Outer Realms, where the paranormal and the supernatural just become the normal and the natural. I am your interstellar tour guide, Joey Medea. I'm so happy that you are here with me tonight. It is truly my honor. When it comes to Joseph Campbell, this is 22 years of learning, of inspiration, of upping my game as a storyteller, opening whole new worlds into mythology and folklore for me. One of my true mentors, a mentor that I didn't meet, but that mentors that were closest to me, which I'll talk about after the show opening for just a bit. He means every bit as much to me. So if you know Joseph Campbell and his work, then we can celebrate together the effect that he's had on our lives. Definitely, comment on your experiences of Joe Campbell and some of the things I talk about tonight. Follow your bliss and the hero's journey, the cave you fear to enter. Are you the light bulb, or are you the light? And much other profound wisdom. So again, welcome. I'm very glad to have you here with me tonight. I think this is going to be a great celebration for the people who know him. And if you are not acquainted with the work of Joseph Campbell, I hope you're going to go out and get acquainted and work his magic into your life. So let's roll the opening. We'll come back and we'll get started. Welcome.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
Again, good evening, friends, and welcome to episode 117. Michael, thank you for carrying the mantle of Happy Thursday. That was Tanya and I's thing. Happy Thursday, Happy Thursday. I'm glad you're doing that. I can't bring myself to do it. As you may all have noticed, I've sort of taken the outro of the show and made it the intro with my own twist. But thank you for doing that, Michael. Hello, Lori. If you guys are acquainted with Joe Campbell, awesome. If not, I'm very, very excited to introduce you. So, like I said, I've had 4 mentors in my life, aside from Tanya, who's add that to the list of everything else that she is to me. But 2 of them I've talked about on the show quite a bit. My Aunt Annette and Rosemary Ellen Guiley, and they were from the spiritual and paranormal side, if you want to look at it that way, although I learned a lot of life wisdom from them. The third was Jerry Cullity, the reason I have 7 Stories Theater Company, and I think if I'm any good at telling stories, it's partially because of Jerry. Wonderful man at a crucial time in my life, was almost like a father to me. And he and his wife introduced Tanya and I. So definitely a mentor. All 3 of those people have passed on. Of course, Joe Campbell passed on too in the 1980s. Michael, thank you so much. I got to put that on the screen and let everybody enjoy it. And for our radio audiences, ERT Radio, 10 o'clock on Wednesday nights, and 8 p.m. Friday nights on Patriot 1776 radio. It's because Thursdays are happy because it's Into the Outer Realms night, spoken by one of our very valued contributors and a very, very close friend. So, Joseph Campbell, a true mentor. I'm going to, when you think of Joseph Campbell or the things that he's most known for, they're really the hero's journey or the monomyth. That's his big thing from his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. So if, 80% of the bands that exist now owe something to the Beatles, well, 85 to 90% of storytellers owe something to A Hero with 1,000 Faces. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. It's all about you and your inner journey and all those things that are in caves, snakes and dragons and monsters and medusas and otherworldly creatures and portals into other dimensions. And we fear to go in there. And Joe Campbell always said, that's exactly where you have to go. Now, if that sounds familiar, someone going into the cave to essentially face themselves and their own fears, you're thinking of Luke Skywalker on Dagobah. As I'll talk about later, George Lucas wrote Star Wars very much to the letter, to the beat, to the note, based on the hero's journey. Another one is a simple but very profound question that I think all of us are probably asking in these troubled, difficult times. Are you the light bulb or are you the light? Are you simply a vessel? And that's all you are, and you're gone, and it's over, or you are light that lasts and generates out well beyond this meat suit that we wear while we're on this very dense plane in all this heavy matter. Are you the light bulb or are you the light? If you can truly say, I am the light, then I think that goes right to Ram Dass's dying is perfectly safe. Because you will endure. You will endure as light. Tanya and I always talk about keeping our candles lit, our vibration high, and that's part of being the light. Welcome, Mark Eddy. Thank you for joining us tonight. And of course, the big one for Joseph Campbell that probably most people know him from is Follow Your Bliss. Now, I have a version of this sign that says Satchit Ananda, which I'll get into later, the Sanskrit, and break that down for you. This one sits on the altar at the foot of our bed in our bedroom. And this is the first thing I see when I wake up in the morning. And it's a reminder. I'm going to go over this because I really think that Follow Your Bliss is misunderstood, misinterpreted. People get all hung up on bliss, just being happiness and all of that kind of thing. It's far more than that. So how was I introduced to Joseph Campbell? Well, in 1997, I was going through a very, very tumultuous time in my life that opened me up to reconnecting with Tanya, connecting in this life like we should have been. Like Jeremy always said, she needed a husband. He and Dan needed a father. And so cosmic arrangements were made. And I was really hurting and kind of broken. And I remember being at the library, the Mesa Public Library, and I saw this set of videotapes. Now, I was writing my fantasy novel, Jester Knight, at the time. So I was very interested in different cultures, medieval, Middle Ages. I'm re-immersed in all of that now in the 1300s for a new project. And I see all of these videotapes, these lectures, comparative mythology, comparative religion, comparative cultures going all the way back to antiquity, in India, in Greece, in Rome, in the Far East. And so that's how I was introduced to Joseph Campbell during a time where I was really, really hurting. I truly experienced a dark night of the soul. I wrote a poem one night where I just didn't want to live anymore. My life was destroyed. Things had totally blown up. And one of the lines was, I poised a pen on the edge of death. And I won't go into details about what that means, but some voice said, hold on, things are going to get better. And I think it was within 4 days that I first set eyes on the love of my life, my twin flame and soulmate, Tanya. So all of this isn't going to be really sticky, icky, lovey, gooey, but I think we all need positive stories and some hope and some strength. Joe Campbell had a twin flame soulmate or muse of his own, and she was a dancer and choreographer named Jean Erdman. She had danced with Martha Graham. She was very, very accomplished. When Joe was a 34-year-old college professor at Sarah Lawrence College in New York, she was a 22-year-old student. She dropped out of school. She came from a very well-to-do family, and they were going to travel around the world. She dropped out of school. They started dating. They were married for 49 years before Joe died, and they worked on some of the same projects, which I'll talk about tonight. Truly the love of his life. And I found out that she died 104 years old. God bless. Just a couple of years ago. So as I was prepping for the show tonight. Now, she did her choreography based on mythology, which is extremely pioneering, combining myth, theater, poetry, and dance. And that is really my roots of when I really kind of grew up out of the theater, from just being an actor, from just being a director, having my own theater company, teaching at dance schools and acting schools, founding my own 2 acting schools. I'll talk about New Mystics later and how that all figures into this journey with Joseph Campbell. So that is very, very important to me as well. And Joe was a huge part of that because he really brought her that mythology, that folklore. If you're interested in Jean's work, and if you love James Joyce and specifically Finnegan's Wake, Joseph Campbell wrote a guide to Finnegan's Wake, a very, very complex but fascinating book. Then you can see The Coach with 6 Insides, which is Jean's adaptation, which was incredibly groundbreaking. And you can find that on YouTube. The Coach with 6 Sides. I was really, really drawn to this whole idea of cross-cultural, broadening out. I've always been that way. You know, as paranormal researchers, Tanya and I pull in from a lot of different traditions. We put a lot of different tools in the toolbox. We don't only subscribe to one method, even our own method that we've devised. Next week, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to present through a slideshow and talk about our Paranormal Bill of Rights. So our 10-point philosophy on paranormal investigation and, more importantly, mediation. So I was working on Jester Knight, like I told you. Anything that was European and Middle Eastern history, religion, culture, I was into all of that. And again, now I'm doing that again. And it stayed with me, and Joe's really stayed with me through all of that. Now, Joseph Campbell, speaking of the Middle Ages and things that I'm reading right now, like Lucifer's Court by Otto Rahn, Joe did a really deep study, a really deep dive into Percival and the Grail legends of King Arthur. You know, between Holy Blood, Holy Grail, which I'm reading now, the Prairie of Zion, the Knights Templar, Oak Island, so many other things. What is the Grail? Or is it the descendants of Jesus? Is it a wooden cup? Is it a cup that's gold and has all these gems and is priceless in different ways? Considering how humble Jesus was and his disciples, fishermen, I really don't think that it was gold and jeweled. It was probably a simple wooden bowl that they drank out of. These are very intriguing things. But in the Middle Ages, there was this huge fascination with King Arthur. There was this huge fascination with the Grail and the search for the Grail. The Grail could simply be that spiritual quest, that thing that we're all trying to find, hiding in the cave that we fear to enter. So Joe Campbell was very, very into all of this. And he said something profound. He found in all of the Grail studies that he was reading, each of the knights went into the forest alone where it was darkest and where there was no path. Now, I love Robert Frost and The Road Less Traveled, and that's what makes me think of that. So they rode out to a separation point together. So the gang all went out, cue the great heroic music, the slow-mo, thinking cinematically. But they come to a place at the edge of the forest, the subconscious, the place of the spiritual quest. You see how all of this works. And they separated and did not pick a place with a path. Hey, if there's a path, someone else had already gone through there. And if they didn't find the Grail on that path, you are not going to find the Grail on that path. And where it was darkness. So they went into that deep night of the soul, the place for the bard of the inner cave, the place of death and rebirth, Again, I really believe that the Grail is spiritual, like the Philosopher's Stone. It's more of a spiritual ideal than a real thing, but worthy of chasing, I think, for all of us, even more so because of that distinction. So for 25 years now, I've been reading his books, I've been studying his lectures. If you're into this and you really are curious about Joe Campbell, join the Joseph Campbell Foundation. I think it's jfc.org. They have all of his lectures there, and he lectured everywhere about everything. You can order DVDs. When I first joined years ago, I got this wonderful DVD, Sakvati, narrated by Susan Sarandon. And it's a beautiful sort of overview, explanation, and exploration of Joe Campbell's seminal work in different world cultures. So that's a very, very good piece to have. I already showed you Here with a Thousand Faces. He did very, very specific things. And this is an old, very early edition I was lucky enough to find, The Mass of God, Oriental Mythology. So Joe really looked at everything. He was known for being quite a handsome devil, which I'll talk about that actually got him in trouble with no less than John Steinbeck. Another major work in the 1980s, Joe Campbell was a quiet college professor. There was an inner circle of people who were aware of Hero with of a Thousand Faces and some of his other work. But he appeared on Bill Moyers. There's a Bill Moyers special. Every once in a while you can find it, especially during pledge drives. I don't think it was originally a pledge drive program, but it was 6 or 8 episodes. It has this beautiful companion book that I love and I go to all the time. I mean, this thing is just full of beautiful pictures explicating all kinds of interesting things. You know, there's just beautiful things on all the pages. This is a wonderful starter kit for Joe Campbell as well as for comparative mythology. It's a wonderful book. Bill Moyers, he and Charlie Rose has fallen out of favor in the past 4 or 5 years, caught up in the Me Too net, which is a shame because it was always a goal of mine to be on Charlie Rose. That obviously is not going to happen. But Bill Moyers was so articulate, and Joe was not afraid to speak the truth. I got a lot of letters because he said there was something sublime about the evil of Hitler, that things are, you know, as the Buddhists say, everything is exactly as it should be. Think about that in today's day and age. Everything is exactly as it should be. So even evil has its purpose, has its mechanism. I mean, think of Judas. If the crucifixion and the resurrection and all of that was preordained, if that was preset, that someone had to be the agent of the quote unquote betrayal, and it wound up being Judas. But if you're part of the plan, are you evil? How willing are you? And Judas certainly got his comeuppance, didn't get to enjoy those 30 pieces of silver because he hung himself in a field where he realized what he did. So these are the kind of profound things that Joe Campbell talked about, that he pushed all of us to talk about. When I say us, I mean storytellers. Really tell the hard stories. So I had been watching all of this stuff, but then it was really everything changed in 2002. I was really starting to make my living as a storyteller, as a teacher, getting more and more playwright gigs. I was touring as an actor in children's theater. It was a very, very good time, working for several theater companies. And I found in a dear friend, Knight and Kathy, I often talk about the book bin. I found this book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And this really changed everything. It's due for another read. I read it 3 times. I read it in 2002, 2003, 2012. And this was where I was really introduced to the hero's journey, which I began to apply in all of my work. By 2005, it was solidly engaged with my work. And again, it's the Monomyth, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So from that point, I was really hooked. So I would always have a picture of Joe Campbell in my classrooms where I taught, at the acting school that I co-founded in New Jersey. 17 years ago this month. It was called the Joe Campbell Room, and I wrote to the Joe Campbell Foundation. I got to talk to all really kind of cool people, and it was wonderful to be able to call that the Joseph Campbell Room. Always have Follow Your Bliss everywhere. And then I was introduced later in life. Tanya and I were. This wonderful film came out. I highly, highly recommend this. I've gifted probably 15 copies of this to mentees and students and fellow storytellers that I thought could need it. It's by Patrick Takaya Solomon. It features wonderful, wonderful speakers, all talking about the work of Joseph Campbell. I wrote an essay that this presentation tonight is based on, that was featured on the Finding Joe website. That was a huge, huge honor for me, and on their Facebook page. It might actually still be there. I'm not sure. But anyway, this is wonderful for our times. I think this and I Am by Tom Shadyac, the director of Patch Adams and the Ace Ventura films. Those are the two. Tanya and I did our most inspiring books and DVDs, and both of those pieces are on there. So I just wanted to tell you that. So what about Joseph Campbell? He was 6 foot tall. Like I said, he was incredibly, incredibly handsome, a real heartbreaker, and he was Olympic level track star. He didn't go to the Olympics, but he was an amazing, amazing track star at 6 foot tall. And what Joe really wanted to be was a fiction writer, and he wasn't good enough. Wherever he sent his stuff, it got rejected. After college and all, he wound up, it was during the Great Depression. There were no jobs anywhere, certainly for not someone with a degree in literature. And so he goes out to the West Coast. He winds up in Pacific Grove, Monterey Peninsula, the place of Cannery Row, and the stories of John Steinbeck. And he meets John Steinbeck and some other guys, and they start a little philosophers club. They drink and they party and they carouse and they philosophize and they write. And Steinbeck was super, super hard on Joe Campbell's writing and said, you just don't have what it takes as a fiction writer. But he's an extraordinary nonfiction writer. So we all need to follow our bliss. Jerry Cullity, who I mentioned, would always say, if you're an apple tree, be an apple tree, because you'll never be an orange tree. And Joe's apple tree was this study of comparative fiction. Before I move on to sort of his process and how all of this was born, I mentioned John Steinbeck and how he got into trouble with him. Well, John Steinbeck had a wife named Carol, and Carol and Joe fell madly in love. And there were a couple of really dark scenes involving a gun where Steinbeck came in heavily intoxicated one of the times and threatened to kill Joe and Carol, and another one of the times he threatened to kill himself. So Joe extricated himself from that situation. He went back east, and he basically isolated for a couple of years while things were really bad with the economy and all. And he just read. He read cultural myths from all around the world. From the time he was a child, he was interested in Native American tales. And he started to go out, and he realized, wow, so many of them have floods. So many of them have dismemberment and rebirth. So many of them have divine births, virgin births. And this is fascinating. So he started to codify it all. And that really led into a total deep dive for him. And then for me, reading his work, which then I applied to my work in theater and storytelling, into world myths, into fairy tales. And I use those because these are stories. If there are writers out there, or people who want to be writers, aspiring writers, struggling writers, successful writers, the myths and the folktales have been refined from oral traditions for thousands of years. They are the ultimate edited, refined stories. So they're perfect. They're succinct. They have multiple layers of symbolism and subtext. You really can't do worse if you want to learn how to be a writer than to study myths. I love to do with kids, with writers, actors, improv companies, 5-minute myth, where I break down the core 10 or 12 elements of a myth, and then you have 15 minutes to put together a 2 or 3 minute myth for everybody to show them. And that really is all owed to Joseph Campbell as an actor, as a storyteller, as a writer, as a director. Then I founded, the two arts and education schools, and really became the linchpin of those. Anyone who studied with me for any length of time will tell you that. Because when it comes to these monomyths, and I'm going to get into the hero's journey now, a couple hundred years ago, they thought there was about 120 different stories you could tell, 120 different unique types of stories you could tell. As the decades and the centuries unfolded, it chopped down. It went from the 120 to about 48. It went down to 20. But really, folks, there are really only 2 stories. We used to call it boy meets girl. Now we can call it person meets person, but we probably have to someone meets someone. The idea of the quest of falling in love, falling out of love, learning something about yourself, falling back into love, the whole romantic comedy trope and all of that. But we used to call it boy meets girl, but it's that journey. The other one is the stranger in a strange land, right? Country mouse and city mouse. Any kind of adventure where someone leaves. Well, the Harry Potter stories, when Harry gets that letter and he accepts the call to adventure by actually attending Hogwarts, that is a hero's journey. Dorothy, by running away from home and following the yellow brick road, is taking a hero's journey. Frodo, who just wants to stay home and have his cakes and have his ales and not venture out because hobbits don't venture out, when he answers the call to deal with the ring and bring it to Mount Doom, he is answering the call of adventure. So you see in high fantasy, magical stories, dream stories, which Wizard of Oz is, you see this. But even the 3 Little Pigs, when mom kicks them out, they don't camp out in their backyard. They go out and they try to do their best. And that is a hero's journey as well. Little Red Riding Hood delivering that basket in that deep, dark forest to Granny. That is a hero's journey. She could have said no. And everything that happens, all that grows. Alice going down the rabbit hole. So I'm sure you see what I'm saying here. So there's 3 main stages to the hero's journey, but understand that this is key. We don't take one hero's journey in our life. We go through the cycle, and the cycle, if you're living a true fulfilled life, sometimes people say, they're continuing education journey or reinventing themselves. I've known some people in their 70s who have gone off and become Jungian psychologists or hedge fund specialists who then become full-time writers because they made a whole bunch of money and they left that behind, and now they're writing their heart. It becomes cyclical. We go through incorporating all the different roles of our lives. So the first is separation. So let's take Tanya, for example. When she applied to the job in Kentucky, it was actually a mistake. The county was the same name as the county here in Ohio. But she didn't say no when she got the interview. She said, I'm going to literally answer this call to adventure. So the call to adventure, or sometimes termed, along with the catalyst, is also the call of adventure. You have to answer. First of all, you have to answer the phone. So there's a great quote in Robert Persic's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. You say, you waited for opportunity and it never came. Well, opportunity knocked and you didn't answer, so opportunity moved on. Elizabeth Gilbert talks about inspiration in Big Magic. If you don't answer inspiration, the muses coming out on you, they're going to go to somebody else and deliver whatever that gem is, whatever that beautiful flame of story is. They're going to find a home for it. If you don't answer that call. So separation, you leave the village, you say goodbye. I just gave you, whether it's Alice or whether it's Harry Potter or whether it's Frodo or whether it's Dorothy Gale, you leave. Then once you're away from home, everything changes. You move from what's called the ordinary world into the upside down world, where everything's different. It's magical, right? Hogwarts is nothing like Muggle Land. It can't be. Oz is nothing like Kansas. It can't be. If it is, then you're not separating from anything. So if you simply go from mom's house, get married, and go to your husband's house, that is not separation and initiation. It's just more of the same role, and you're not going to grow very much. That's why college or a year of travel around the world doing hostels or whatnot, that's the separation. That's where we have our greatest learning curve as people. And hopefully we have that fairly early on, 17, 18, 19 years old, if we can manage that one way or another. Certainly the military is a way to separate and go out and be inducted in a world that's very, very different than civilian life. And so we grow and we're challenged and we go through initiation. There are rites of passage. I've been saying for decades, and really Carl Jung was saying it in his time, decades and decades ago, we're sadly lacking in modern myths, and we're sadly lacking in rites of passage. So things like gangs become stand-ins for proper rites of passage. Some rites of passage, you can read about them in Campbell's books, were quite vicious. Young men were mutilated, they were scarred, so they would always remember it, so they would be forever changed. There was a ritual where in some tribes and cultures, they would break in the middle of the night, and the mother would hold on to the child, and the child would be dragged away by men in demons' masks. And I don't know that we need to do that, but we need some types of rituals, rites of passage, so that we know that we're changing. We know that we're in that world. And even though they're enacting what seems like violence through these initiations, these are our family, these are our tribe, these are our mentors, and they're only going to let us fall far enough and hurt long enough to get the lesson. And really, during initiation, there are tests, there are allies, and there are enemies. And anybody who's spent any time on this earth knows that you're going to have all of those. The tests are going to come. You need to constantly be testing yourself, allies, and there's going to be enemies. Now, the next is the return. You return completely changed. You return with wisdom. So, in Native American terms or in Celtic terms, you leave and you either go into a cave or you go onto a mountain and you undergo some kind of ritual in the darkness, a vision quest. You ask for wisdom, you cry for a vision in the Lakota. Literally cry for a vision. I've seen it in Sweat Lodge with men who were trying to overcome addiction, who had a sick child, who were trying to elevate their community. To cry for a vision, to weep for a vision, and get this new knowledge. Now, you can't, when you get this new knowledge, you can't keep it and be selfish. You have to do what Joe Campbell calls, you have to return with the elixir. So the bard, the young warrior or brave or holy man, after the vision quest, the new knowledge, the quest, comes back and needs to share that with the village. So my whole journey as a storyteller, I think, is very much separation, initiation, return. It tends to happen. I think that we work on natural 7-year cycles. So sometime in the next 2 or 3 years, I'll be due for some kind of big separation that will create a new initiation and a return that'll see me into my elder years, whatever that might be, whatever that journey is. So this idea of the hero's journey, separation, initiation, return. I mentioned that George Lucas used it in Star Wars. Other storytellers were noticing, they were attending Joe Campbell's lectures and they were going, wow, this fits really nicely with the 3-act model that we use in our writing. I use the 3-act model for everything. Now, aspiring writers out there or writers who are hearing that the hero's journey and the 3-act model are junk and they limit creativity and they're all a lie and storytelling doesn't work that way, they're clickbaiting you. They're clickbaiting you and they're trying to just sell you on something that's false. All the best, most successful writers that I know use the 3-act journey. If you're familiar with the work of Charlie Kaufman, there's a beautiful movie with Nicolas Cage that I just revisited for a project I'm doing called Adaptation. And that resistance against that model, that resistance against that structure results in mess of storytelling. Once you get that structure down, then man, you can do whatever you want. Think about it like a house. A house needs a foundation. It needs proper framing. Doors and windows need to be properly enforced. The roof needs to be properly supported with beams and trusses and A-frames and all that kind of thing. If you mess around with that, the first time a hurricane comes, you're going to be in trouble. But using that form, there are as many houses as there are people in the world style-wise. And when you decorate the outside and you decorate the inside, which is what the writer really does with their flair, with their characters, who inhabits that house, that's what makes a house a home, if you think of it that way. So it's not structure that makes the story, even though, wisdom is structure is everything, but it's the population of your characters and their problems, the way they solve the problems, all that great stuff. This led to a man named Christopher Vogler, who wrote a book called The Writer's Journey. Christopher Vogler became a consultant for Disney. So if you love the Disney heyday, oh man, of The Lion King and Tarzan and Aladdin and all those great classic films, and Meckler and the rest of those guys were doing with beautiful music and bringing in Phil Collins and Elton John and all that great kind of stuff. All of those are based on the hero's journey. They're all based on the 3-act model. Vogler put together The Lion King that way and presented it that way. And so that continues, of course, to be the lineage. Like I said, famously applied by George Lucas in Star Wars. He met with Joe Campbell, really wanted to understand, and you can see it. You can see Luke's separation. He wants to leave. He doesn't leave. He lets his uncle kind of bully him. He feels obligated. Then when he meets his mentor and he gets the magical item, the sword, the lightsaber, see how it works. They go back. The family's dead. Everything's burned. I mean, it's an iconic moment where he says to Ben, let's go. I'm ready. He's done refusing, because there's usually a refusal, right? We're all worried. We're all scared. Tanya had plenty of moments of doubt before she said yes to taking the journey. And now she's going through initiation. She's training in a different kind of field that she's ever been in. In some ways, she's learning a lot about herself. She's kind of caretaking for her father again. We're separated, and we're both living more independently than we're used to doing. And then there will be the return, and we don't know what that is. If I'm going to go to her, or she's going to come to me, and when that's possibly going to be. But right now, it's tests, lots of tests, allies. She has allies and enemies in the sense of going through training and meeting different kind of people and supervisors and all that kind of stuff is not always easy. People don't always click and get along, so on and so forth. So I mentioned that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. That is, Yoda says to him, don't leave your sword out here. You don't need it. No. I'm taking my lightsaber. I keep saying sword. And when he confronts Darth Vader and slices off the thing, who is he really confronting? Himself. And that is really the truth behind jihad. Jihad is not go out and slaughter the infidel. Jihad is go in and do the inner battle with your own demons. Wrestle like Saint Anthony with the demons in the cell. That's the jihad. That's the initiation. And then you come back to take your place as a leader in the community, right? So over the past 20 years, and I don't really want to dwell on all my accomplishments and all that, but just Joe Campbell has informed my work to the tune of the 2 art centers, 22 years as an actor, director, writer, teacher, creation of 25 plays by interacting bullying education and prevention workshops that I am very proud to say we reached through the social justice plays and all that. Over 50,000 young people and adults, Seven Stories Theater Company. Very proud of it. And there's the book, right? The storytelling, but also the 1001 Nights and those cultural tears, the Oriental mythologies, the Middle Eastern mythology, anthologies, and all of that. Publication of 7 novels, 2 nonfiction books on the paranormal, which you all know, about poems, essays, short stories. Just turned in the outline for my 5th screenplay, the first one that has a Hollywood producer attached to it, and all owed to Joseph Campbell. All of those projects, in one way or another, went through the hero's journey, went through the 3-act model, went through separation, initiation, and return. And anybody out there who is a project-based person, you know that that's cyclical. When you take on a new project, a new arts project, a new creative project, a new work project, starting a business, you're so busy, you separate, you go through all the initiations, and you return. And sometimes you do it over again, right? Some entrepreneurs build businesses and sell them just so they can start another business. That's a different kind of hero's journey. All of this is owed to Joseph Campbell. Like I said, I use the hero's journey to check the architecture of all my work, stage, page, and screen. I'm very happy and proud that probably 12 or 15 of my mentees that I worked with for over a decade are out also talking about Joseph Campbell, applying Joseph Campbell to their teaching, but also to their lives, because I'm so old now that these kids I met in middle and high school now have families. They have children of their own, and they're applying Joseph Campbell's work. And I hear that over and over. I see their posts while they're quoting these different kinds of things. Like I said, I've given copies of Hero with 1,000 Faces to probably about a half a dozen people. And really, I cannot stress enough. Finding Joe by Patrick Takaya Solomon DVD. It's wonderful. You can find it on streaming. I don't know if it's on Amazon or it's on Netflix, but you can usually find it on streaming. You can watch it that way if you want. And I've gifted that to 12 or 15 people over the years. That's from 2011. So I probably watched it 20 times if it's 10 years old. I try to watch it at least twice a year. So these guys have gone out into the world. I hope that you will be inspired. Yesterday, I did a presentation on Allen Ginsberg's Howl, and I got a wonderful compliment at the end. Someone said, you inspired me so much with your passion that I'm going to go out and read Howl. Well, I hope you go out and learn Joseph Campbell's work. That will make tonight really, really worthwhile. Hey, Howie. Hi, Julie. Thanks for joining. So I want to talk about just how profoundly, Joe, when I was creating the logo for the theater company, used to be called New Mystics. My review site is still New Mystics Reviews. Our art and poetry site, where we feature the work of 140 artists and writers from around the world, that I founded in 2002, is also still New Mystics. For a variety of reasons, we had to change the name of the theater company. Never mind all that. But you can see the logo. And this owes very, very much to Joseph Campbell and his work, because Joseph Campbell was very inspired by a man named William Butler Yeats. He was a mystic from Britain, from Ireland, I believe. And he wrote a work called A Vision, and he talked about the idea of the primary mask. If you think of the Billy Joel song, The Stranger, we all have a face that we hide away forever. We take them out and show ourselves when no one else is gone. We have personas. Walter Matthau, the actor, said, I love actors because they're phonies and they know they're phonies. It's the idea of the persona, the mask. We all wear them, the different roles that we play, the different hats we wear during the course of the day, how he wears his top hat when he does his show. So on the Riff Network. So what I did was I took the comedy and tragedy masks and I fused them with the lunar and the solar phases. Again, cycles, right? The sun sets, the moon rises, vice versa. The moon has cycles. The sun really doesn't have cycles. So the sun is that solar lion, slightly more permanent, where the moon goes through these phases. And they are kind of as the moon is waxing and waning and slivering and halving and fulling. that's a hero's journey of its own that the moon is taking. And the moon and the sun were both completely personified in so many cultures and so many myths and all. Joseph Campbell also informs very, very deeply my spiritual study and practice, and has since that really started 20 years ago through Antoinette. Tanya and I were looking to grow, to change, to figure things out, to heal, so that our partnership could really flourish. And because of the work of Joe Campbell, I studied shamanism, Mircea Eliade, and all the great writers about shamanism. I've gotten to speak to shamans, have engaged in different shamanic practices, participated in Lakota sweat lodge ceremonies. We actually had Lakota come to our property, or white folk also who were taught by Lakota chiefs. And we had that for 2.5 years on our property. I learned to sing a lot of the traditional songs. None of that would have happened. Now, a sweat lodge, okay? You separate from everybody else and you're initiated. You go into the sweat lodge, the womb of the earth, this dark place with the hot stones and all the steam, and it is painful. And you sing and you pray and you smoke the pipe and you supplicate in the dirt. Then you cry for a vision. If you're lucky enough, strange, miraculous things happen to you inside as they're happening outside. And at the end of a 2.5 hour sweat lodge ceremony, you come out into the cool night. I mean, you're so overheated and burned. And I wore a stone cross necklace and I burned my skin one night because it got so hot. So you come out. You're barely dressed. It's like being newborn, and there are the stars, the moon. We had it in our holler in West Virginia, so there were no lights all around. So brilliant. And you truly feel like you are returning with new wisdom. It's made you a better person. It's made you a better member of the tribe, of the community. And that's really the whole idea behind it. If you ever get the opportunity to do a sweat lodge, it's highly recommended. We were very honored. I did undertake a vision quest, went out, didn't eat, drank very little for 3 days, had some visions, learned some things. That was very important. I've gone on countless drum journeys, astral travels, talked about all those things over the years in the episodes of this show. So I'm not going to bore you with them, but all of these things, the inner caves and the bottomless oceans of the subconscious, were all things that Joe Campbell talked so eloquently about, inspired so many people. Now, I mentioned that his most famous thing is follow your bliss. Now, this comes from the Sanskrit, sat, S-A-T, chit, C-H-I-T, ananda. Now, ananda is the bliss. So this is how Joe came to it. If you look at Sat Chit Ananda, Sat is actually being. We're existing. Hopefully it's an eternal being. Hopefully you're the light and not the light bulb, and you're in that place, but that's your being. Your being, you're becoming, you're experiencing. And Chit is consciousness. So Joe Campbell said this: I came to this idea of bliss because in Sanskrit, which is the great spiritual language of the world, so mantra-based meditation, which I've been doing for 20 years, is Sanskrit. There are 3 terms that represent the brink, the jumping off place to the ocean. There we go again, the caves, the oceans of transcendence. So like I said, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat being, Chit consciousness, Ananda means bliss or rapture. So Joe says this: I thought, I don't know whether my consciousness is proper consciousness or not. I don't know whether what I know of my being is my proper being or not, but I do know what my rapture is. I do know what my bliss is. So let me hang on to rapture. Let me hang on to bliss, and that will bring me both my consciousness and my being. Well, it certainly worked for Joe Campbell, and it worked for me. Prior to Joe Campbell, I had this great dichotomy going on with me. Carl Jung talked about it as personality 1 or personality 2. the second one often being your shadow, your darkness, the thing you're afraid of. It's not the best version of yourself, but and they battled. I called them Joseph, ironically, Joseph and Joey. So Joseph was the good son, the good husband, loyal to a fault, didn't really take chances because just wanted to be perfect at everything. The oldest son with the father's name, on and on, yada, 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 and battling this creative. But Joey was so strong. I mean, that's what I do now. The creative, because they worked together. And that was through Carl Jung, who was seminal to Joseph Campbell, and through Campbell himself, also through Yeats and A Vision and the Mask, the personas, all of that kind of integration. So I think that I've come to consciousness and an understanding of my consciousness, my being, and what that means. But don't think that bliss or rapture is just all fun and great and good, because if it was, everybody would do it. The president of the Joseph Campbell Foundation says that following your bliss is doing the thing that you cannot not do. A double negative, but actually very beautiful. Following your bliss is doing the thing that you cannot not do. I was very lucky from the time that I was a little boy. I knew that I wanted to be a storyteller. By the time I went to college, I knew that I wanted to write stories as well as perform and create and direct them. So I got a double major in English and theater. I count myself as very, very lucky that I just knew I was born. I don't know if it was a memory. I have gotten my palm read, and there seemed to be a memory embedded in there that a storyteller is who I am and what I do. And somehow in the past, in a previous life, I failed to answer the call and tell that big story. So I think that this show, Into the Outer Realms, is rectifying that and telling these really big stories, and often very personal, like poise a pen on the edge of death, right? So bliss is not unwavering happiness. That is not what it's about. But it is that thing that you cannot not do. So figure out what that is, and that's your bliss. You don't have to make a living at it. It can be an avocation and not a vocation. It can be a hobby. But if you're passionate about it, and when you have some free time or you have a few extra bucks or work's a little slow, or that's the thing you go to, work on that. Because when you do that, Joe said, there are doors where there were only walls, and help comes from the most unexpected of places. And folks, I will tell you that over the past 25 years, as a storyteller, as a professional in that world, although I've suffered plenty of defeats, had my tail between my legs numerous times, had lots of things that haven't worked out, I answered the call. I learned a lot, and help always did come from unexpected places. It happens to me all the time in my career now. If this Mothman play goes big, if the screenplay goes big, it's because I was following my bliss, and help came from unexpected places. When we first were doing this show on our previous network, we had on a wonderful Toltec shaman named William Douglas Horden. He gave me a great piece of advice that I'm going to pass on to you. Let people come to you. When you're following your bliss, let people come to you. Put your stuff out there. Don't be beholden to it. Don't get attached to any kind of outcomes. This is, spirituality 101, but I think we all need to hear it in these really troubled times. And because people are looking for meaning. And I talk to people all week who say, I can't find any meaning. I can't find meaning in my life. Nothing has meaning. What I learned from Joseph Campbell and some of these other people is meaning is not found. It's made. And by separating, initiating, and returning over and over again, by following your bliss, that is where you will create your meaning. You can't help but not. It's the only way to survive the ritual. It's the only way to survive the initiation. Another thing, and this is what I'm going to leave you with for tonight. Joe said, let go of the life that you had planned and live the life you are meant to live. In the past 2 years, many of us had the life that we had planned ripped out from under us. And we do it too. The universe will nudge, it'll nudge a little harder, it'll shove, and then it'll kick your ass right out the door. Um, and that's what happened to me in 1997 when my life totally blew up because I refused to answer the call. I was so committed, and that was that Joseph part of me instead of the Joey part of me, saying no, this is what we've planned, this is what we have committed to, and we're gonna unwave from this. Mark, that's wonderful. Follow your bliss to the tune of Into the Outer Realms, or any other song that I have other songs that I follow my bliss to that I love. I'm listening to Vivaldi's Four Seasons a lot lately, but thank you, Mark. I truly appreciate that. And that's right along with Brene Brown's authenticity. If you're interested, you can go to our YouTube channel. It would probably be the most easy way to find it, to our top 12 list that Tanya and I did last year of the most inspiring things. It seems like everybody can use this stuff. If you can be authentic, you'll go into the cave. You will be the light instead of the light bulb. You will embrace and follow your bliss. You will answer the call to adventure over and over and over again. It's not easy. I don't know that bliss is the greatest word, but it's that place of contentment. It's that place of peace where you're resonating on a high level. What Gay Hendricks calls in The Big Leap, you experience Einstein time. So a minute, you feel like you've been doing something and it's been 10 minutes. You feel like you've been doing something for 10 minutes and it's been an hour. Again, when I'm writing, when I'm creating, that's when I know that I'm in Einstein time. So I definitely would revisit that episode if you're struggling. I would love to talk to you about Joe Campbell. If you get any of these books, highly recommend The Power of Myth and The Hero's Journey, although he wrote many. If you really want to deep dive into Joseph Campbell, A Fire in the Mind. Oh yeah. How Stephen and Robin Larson wrote this authorized biography. It still tells the stories. That's where I learned about Steinbeck and his wife Carolyn. Also, just because it's an authorized biography doesn't mean that it whitewashes in any way. Joe was very human, always answering the call to adventure. So next week, like I said, I'm going to do the Paranormal Bill of Rights. So I hope that you will join me for that. Again, I think that's a very positive thing in pulling out the most positive of the work that we do. I'm trying to help someone now who got a spell and was kind of dabbling in magic, and something not so great wound up in their home. So I'm trying to work with them now to cleanse the home and get things back to normal and maybe learn a lesson. So that is a separation and initiation. This person is very much going through an initiation now, and I will do everything I can to help them so that they return wiser for the wear and are more careful about the calls that they put out. So I think it's important to go over those. Then I have one more episode before I take off the 3 weeks. During those 3 weeks that I'm gone, I'm going to replay Solaris Blue Raven. It was a very popular episode from several months ago, and the 2 Reverend Michael Carter episodes. So you will get a fix on Thursday night. You can go to the Outer Realms page. While I'm touring is Ginsburg in Oklahoma, different separation, initiation, and return, going on those 3-week tours. That puts me out of my comfort zone, being away from my office and my things and all the things you see around me for 3 weeks. I may do Jack the Ripper, or I may try to keep things on the super positive tip and hit you up with some other inspirational things, because I think that's what we all need right now. So I'm going to think on that. If anybody has any thoughts on that, definitely you can message me. Charles, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Charles does a show on Wednesday nights on ERT Radio. Charles is quite wonderful. Charles, put in the chat room there the name of your show and what time and when it's on. And I will see you all next week. Thank you all so much. Be safe. Follow your bliss. Enter that cave. If you need some help, I'm happy to help you with all of that. And take care. Have a terrific night. Tuesday. It's Tuesday night, Charles. I had a feeling after I said it. So Charles will put that information in the chat room for you. Thank you all for joining me tonight, and I'll see you next time. Bye.